everybody, happy Wednesday. So, we are going to do a really interesting deep dive today. But before we get there, Stephanie, I just have to give a quick update on something we were talking about on Monday. Because remember, towards the end of our conversation, we were like, how has Hillary Clinton's name not come up in conversation with all of these newly released documents? Because clearly she was complicit in the whole Russiagate narrative and making up the Steele dossier. And we were like, we need more info, right? She needs to be reinvestigated. Well, no shit. Like later in the day, on Monday, this 35-page addendum that was part of a declassified appendix from, I guess, a 2018 DOJ Inspector General report was made public. And it apparently details how the FBI received thumb drives containing hacked State Department data, including the Clinton emails. And like none of that information was ever comprehensively analyzed or properly investigated, of course, because it was the FBI under James Comey. And Senator Chuck Grassley has been pushing for transparency on this, I guess, since 2016. And he calls it the Clinton Annex. And he's consistently accused the FBI of stonewalling and withholding evidence related to the investigation of Hillary's emails. And he's been repeatedly requesting declassification since at least 2018. And every time he's been denied by the FBI, and they say, oh, there's procedural or privacy concerns. Well, after our episode on Monday, Pam Bondi released the annex. And so Grassley gave a statement and he said, quote, "This document shows an extreme lack of effort and due diligence in the FBI's investigation of former Secretary Clinton's email usage and mishandling of highly classified information. The Comey FBI's negligent approach and perhaps intentional lack of effort in the Clinton investigation is a stark contrast to its full-throated investigation of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, which was based on the uncorroborated and now discredited Steele dossier. Comey's decision-making process smacks of political infection," end quote. So I just had to mention this because we were questioning what about Hillary on Monday, and then this came to light. So I don't know if this is false hope on my part or what, but maybe the timing of this is also part of Trump's chess game plan.
I never thought we would hear about the emails again
Mhm.
because remember, like that was such a big deal. And then, of course, nothing ever happened. It was just swept under the rug. And I think in those emails, I mean, the Trump-Russia collusion thing is probably the least concerning of like everything that was in there. So it'll be interesting now. Are they going to release more things that are within those emails? Like, has Trump just been waiting for this moment? I don't know.
Right.
It
Yeah.
makes me hopeful though, because I mean, there was some damning stuff. If that's the WikiLeaks stuff, it's like it was never addressed. And there was some crazy, crazy shit in there.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remain hopeful after the way our conversation went on Monday, which was not even how I expected it to go, right? And then
Yeah.
it turned into like this more hopeful and positive thing. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And did you
But
see like none of the mainstream media is reporting on this? And if they do, they're basically like trying to discredit it, saying
yeah,
like, well, the Democrats are denying it. And a bunch of them like didn't even post anything. There was like no news on it. It's crazy.
yeah, it is. And I don't know how the media is still like on this dying train. Like,
It's a slow death.
yeah, get your shit together. Like, I don't know, the whole thing. It just shows how deep the corruption is
Yeah.
because they're still hanging on to this narrative, which means it's not dead yet. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But we are going to completely switch topics today because there's some crazy shit going on in the world of health. And last Friday, Secretary of State Margot Rubio and HHS Secretary RFKJ issued a joint statement formally rejecting the WHO's 2024 International Health Regulations amendments. And we have talked about this at length, and I am so excited this happened. But I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into this because, especially in light of all the stuff you've talked about lately, Stephanie, with like the Nipah virus. And I still think the bird flu is like out there waiting in the wings. And I'm just really relieved about this decision because you know how we were talking about how we're still beholden to being part of the WHO until January of next year.
Yep.
Well, from what I understand, with this decision, even if there is a global pandemic before we're officially withdrawn from the WHO in January of 2026, we are not bound by these new amendments. So the amendments date back to May of 2024, when the WHO Assembly agreed on 5 new changes to the global pandemic treaty. So, one change was creating a formal definition for the term pandemic emergency instead of saying public health emergency of international concern. And they're doing this as a means of like quickly mobilizing enhanced global cooperation on surveillance, response, and resource management when it comes to pandemics. The second thing was like strengthened equality and solidarity measures because they established a coordinating funding body to ensure that developing countries receive equitable access to vaccines, treatments, and diagnostics. And I guess there's like some kind of fee that vaccine manufacturers have to pay. Then we have the third point, reinforcing core capacities by expanding member states' obligations to include prevention and preparedness instead of just detection and reporting. And then mandatory designation of a national international health regulation authority and potential regional layers of the IHR to monitor health threats through enhanced surveillance and response structures. And finally, number 5, institutionalizing pandemic cooperation by creating a states party committee to oversee implementation and coordination among countries. So these changes will be taking effect on September 19th of this year for every country that is part of the WHO, unless they formally rejected the amendments by July 19th, which is what the US did. And we did it the day before on the 18th. So I want to read the joint statement from Rubio and RFKJ. And this was again on the 18th. They said, quote, today, the Department of State, in collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services, transmitted the official U.S. rejection of the 2024 amendments to the international health regulations. This action delivers on our promise to the American people to fight for Americans in the international system, protect our national sovereignty, and prevent international bureaucrats from shaping U.S. domestic policies. In 2024, the World Health Assembly adopted amendments to the international health regulations that significantly expanded the World Health Organization's authority over international public health responses. Developed without adequate input, these amendments expand the role of the WHO in public health emergencies, create additional authorities for the WHO for shaping pandemic declarations, and promote the WHO's ability to facilitate equitable access of health commodities. Terms throughout the 2024 amendments are vague and broad, risking WHO coordinated international responses that focus on political issues like solidarity rather than rapid and effective actions. The amendments also suggest that countries develop capabilities that jeopardize management and dissemination controls over public health information, potentially stifling valuable scientific debate. Furthermore, these revisions compel countries to adopt digital health documents. Our agencies have been and will continue to be clear. We will put Americans first in all of our actions, and we will not tolerate international policies that infringe on American speech, privacy, or personal liberties. These amendments risk unwarranted interference with our national sovereign rights to make health policy. We are proud to have worked jointly to ensure public health policy continues to be dictated by the values and the will of the American people, not unelected global actors, end quote. Is this fucking amazing or what?
It's such a relief because I was so worried about that. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to really, push us into this next pandemic because they know the US is going to be leaving, and not a part of this treaty. So that gives me a little peace of mind. I mean, we're not really in the clear, but it does make me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, and this is actually huge because the United States is the only country out of all 194 WHO member states that issued a formal rejection of the amendments and that will not be bound by this agreement if we do have another global pandemic. And of course, the WHO like downplayed the concerns. They said the amendments don't grant them the authority to impose lockdowns, mandates, or quarantines. And they said that digital certificates and vaccine credentials are merely like technical frameworks to help countries with pandemic response and that they're going to be voluntary and not compulsory. But there is a digital ID clause that's part of these new IHR amendments that will be introducing new roles for health documents. And you can look this shit up on government websites, just like you can look up everything else I've talked about today, because it all came from government websites. And this particular clause comes from Article 35 and Annex 6 of the IHR. So currently, health documents can be digital or paper. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because everything we've talked about with the way AI is going and the way technology is going, pretty soon digital health documents are going to become the norm. And the International Health Assembly has come up with very specific standards that are going to be coordinated by the WHO. And this is going to include interoperability, data safeguards, and authenticity verification using technology like QR codes. And they're also going to require a clinician's digital signature and some kind of authentication method, again, like a QR code, to basically link everything to their official information. And again, this is voluntary right now, but we know that can change in a heartbeat, especially when governments decide to punish citizens who don't cooperate with the narrative during a pandemic or other emergency or whenever they want to control the public. And we've seen this time and time again with COVID and talked about it extensively. And Stephanie and I actually have a really great episode coming up next week that is going to open your eyes about some of the digital ID surveillance-driven systems that are being created and used right now, both in Europe and the US. So keep that in mind as we talk about what we're talking about today and how this all ties together with a global pandemic treaty.
Yeah, and just speaking of like surveillance data systems, this just happened to me literally yesterday. So I have to bring it up because I didn't even think about it before. So I was on my phone and if you have an Apple phone, there's like that health app that just
Yeah.
comes with the phone. And I got a notification and it was like connect your health records. And it was like wanting me to connect with my health insurance company and like the medical system where I have like my lab work and stuff done. And it like knew, like it was like connect Baycare, connect Cigna. And I'm like, what the hell? So I'm just thinking before we really started diving into all this stuff, I mean, I probably still wouldn't have connected it, but it's like, oh, how convenient. Then this app has all of my information and I can link it with my Apple Watch. And it's like you're giving your medical information over to an app that can you really trust it? And so anyhow, I've noticed I've gotten that notification like multiple times. Like it keeps trying to push anytime I open that app for me to connect my medical records. And it's just interesting how like just think about how that could be used with something like this. There's a pandemic and the World Health Organization is asking for like these digital records. And it's just, I don't trust it. So I don't think anyone should be connecting their health information, their medical records with their iPhone. But
Yeah, that's great.
it's just crazy how, you were saying they're like, oh, the technical frameworks, like the digital IDs, it's voluntary, it's not compulsory. And it's like, okay, it's in writing. So we're just supposed to take your word for it that, like, oh, forget what happened during COVID. We're not going to mandate anything. I mean, give me a freaking break. And it's alarming that we are the only one out of 194 countries that are standing up and saying, like, yeah, we don't think this is a good idea. You know?
Yeah, I guess like Italy voiced concerns about it, but then they didn't end up like opting out of it. So we are literally the only country that has.
Well, and you have to think too, like, we have access to a lot. Well, I say we have access to pharmaceutical companies, but then again, like look at COVID, where we had to worry about China not sending over our, prescription drugs and things like that. But some of these smaller countries, maybe they feel like they don't have a choice because if there was a pandemic, like they're not going to get first dibs on vaccines or something. I don't know, but I just think it's wild that this organization that has failed so miserably is basically going to be in control of like the modern world.
Can you imagine like the chaos though if okay, so countries have to give a certain percentage of their vaccines, right? Like, imagine if there is a massive fucking like legit pandemic where people are dying and there's not enough vaccines to go around, and countries that have their own vaccines have to instead like follow this equity agreement and make sure that other countries are getting access while people in their own countries may be suffering and dying. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, and that's the thing because people will say, oh, this pandemic treaty, it doesn't mean that the WHO would have control over the country. The country would still be sovereign and be able to make their own laws. In a perfect world, okay.
Yeah.
But in a situation like you just described, where there's a highly fatal pandemic and there's not enough vaccines to go around, you better believe they're going to exert their power and control, and
Yep.
you're screwed because it's in writing. And that's the thing. It's like they're trying to take the word that, like, oh, we won't mandate anything. Yes, you absolutely will. You've already done it before. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I'm an idiot for believing it again.
Well, what's crazy is there was all this language in the revision about mandating. They had a whole, um, oh my gosh, can't remember what it was called. It was a whole like not department, but like a whole area set up where they monitor missing. It's called the infodemic clause. It was a clause where it would have been a legal requirement for the WHO to monitor, censor, and like regulate misinformation and disinformation. And this was all part of the treaty. And they actually had to like take that language out because it was in the early drafts. And it was like people were talking about how this is regulation of speech and censorship, and you had pushback from like civil liberties unions and stuff. But that's clearly what they want, and don't tell me that's not going to happen in the event of a fucking pandemic.
I mean,
They
it
just
already
took out the
happened.
language out.
They did
Yeah,
censor people in a country that has free speech. Like,
right.
wake up, people, wake up. It's so crazy. And it's wild that like Biden just signed this or whoever, maybe the auto pen
Oh,
signed this, but
yeah.
like he didn't give it any thought. He just signed us into this thing. And had Trump not won, we would still be in it. And then you think about like NATO, for example. Look at how unfair that's been, how much money we've given in comparison to the other countries. But then everyone gets the same protection. It's like, would that be the same thing here where we're going to give the vast majority and get like nothing in return? Because that seems to be what happens when the United States joins these global agreements.
It would be if Kamala was our president right now or anyone else in the
Hmm.
Democratic Party.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do feel better if we're not a part of this, but I still think that they are creating another pandemic. And I think it's with this Nipah. I'm going to say Nip. I hate the freaking word Nipah, but I thought it was Nipah, but then I heard like some Australian news station was calling it Nipah. And I don't know if that's
But
because
that's
of,
an Australian accent. I
well, that's what I
looked it
was
up.
thinking. I'm just going to call it Nipah because
I looked it
it's
up because
weird.
yes, because we always mispronounce shit. So I
Yeah.
looked it up and it was Nipah
Okay. So the Australian
phonetically.
news network got it wrong then. Which, by the way, it was a news clip, a current one from some local station in Australia where they were talking about this. Like, basically, like, brace yourselves, we're monitoring this closely. And I'm like, oh, that's great. That's great. Um, but I have to go down this again, especially if someone missed our last episode, but I've just been really trying to dive deep on this thing because I am telling you, I really hope I'm wrong, but I really think this could be used to create like a pandemic that's way worse than COVID, way more deadly. So, Nipah is literally the WHO's blueprint for future pandemics. It's what they've talked about for a while. There's been multiple simulations on it. So it's on their radar. It's been on their radar, okay? Yet the WHO failed to demand detailed disclosure around Nipah gain of function activity. So you're telling me you're worried, your whole job is to like keep people safe and prevent another pandemic, and you're worried about Nipah, but then you find out that there's gain of function research on Nipah, and you're not going to demand details on that? Like, are you kidding me? So remember the WHO's 2021 origin investigation on COVID ruled out lab leaks. They said it was extremely unlikely. And even their own head, Tedros, acknowledged data blockages and urged more probe transparency. But they stuck with their story that COVID did not come from a lab leak. And we're supposed to trust them again, right? So now we know they lied. Everybody lied to cover their asses. We know it was came from a lab, and this ties into Nipah. So stick with me. So you have NIH from the United States, NIH that funneled money to EcoHealth Alliance, and then EcoHealth Alliance subcontracted research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, including on bat-borne pathogens like coronaviruses and Nipah. Nipah is, they're doing the same exact thing they did with COVID in that lab with Nipah, except Nipah is way more fatal. We said it has like anywhere from a 40 to 100% fatality rate. So not only did the World Health Organization not conduct oversight like they're supposed to, but they were complicit in hiding the truth that COVID originated in a lab. So they failed on every metric possible with COVID. Literally everything that they put out, we now know was the opposite of the truth, right? But now they want complete control of the world in the next pandemic.
Mhm.
That's insane. Why is every news network not talking about this? Why aren't people raising red flags? I mean, it's just absolutely wild.
Why are modern, like, not third world nations agreeing to this?
Yeah, exactly. It's insane because it's part of the elite agenda. Like they have no say. Let's just call it what it is. They have no say. It's the people pulling the puppet strings that are putting this all together, and it's a power grab. So, in regards to the Nipah virus, EcoHealth Alliance has been involved in funding field research on Nipah through these NIH grants, just like they did with COVID. And Fauci has signed off on this. Why this guy is not in prison yet, I don't know, but it's driving me crazy. So, despite denials before the Senate, Fauci and NIH's Dr. Tabak, I don't know if I said that right, they later privately admitted that NIH funded gain of research or gain of function studies in Wuhan. So it's all out. Like we know that was happening. That's old news, right? A GOP led House subcommittee pressed NIH's Tabak to concede that the NIH funded gain of function research in Wuhan in the lab. And he did. And it contradicted Fauci's sworn Senate testimony. So that happened, yet again, Fauci's still not in prison. Also, you have Rutgers' Richard Ebright, who stated that the NIH EcoHealth grants unequivocally funded gain of function research in Wuhan. So it is out there. I think people are still confused, like what this is. Gain of function research took a virus that wouldn't have ever been a pandemic, and they manipulated it in a lab to make it highly transmissible. So it became a global disease. And Fauci was the one that signed off on all of this funding. And that is why Rand Paul is still to this day like the only one that's calling for criminal charges against Fauci. And it needs to be talked about because we think COVID's in the past, but like I said, they're doing the same damn thing with Nipah to this day, to this very day. The United States is giving funding to that lab to do this shit. So we all need to be paying attention to this. So no one's been held accountable. No one. No, not a damn person for this gain of function research that led to the pandemic, which led to millions of people losing their lives, lockdowns, the whole nine yards, right? So let me just kind of like summarize. The US funded researchers to go into caves and take bats to find new viruses like COVID and Nipah. And that's the other thing I don't know if people realize, like Nipah came about in 2018. Did a bat just wander out of the cave and come about? No. These scientists at these labs, they are literally going deep into these caves and they are taking bats out to like find all these different viruses. That's what they did with COVID. It's what they did with Nipah. If they could just leave shit alone, would it ever like turn into anything? No, probably not. So they took this virus, they put it in a lab, they mutated it and made it highly transmissible and more deadly. Then we had a pandemic that killed millions of people. Then they continued funding the lab and gain of function research. And now they're starting to make vaccines for Nipah. And I mean, I feel like we're the only ones talking about this, Tara. Like, no one
Yeah.
else is like panicking about this. So again, I just want to be perfectly clear. Nipah would not become a pandemic on its own. As we said in that previous episode, less than 1,000 people worldwide have been infected. Like it wouldn't be a big deal. So if it wouldn't be a big deal, if it's infected less than 1,000 people, then why the hell is that the model for every single pandemic simulation? Like all of them, the governments, the WHO, like all of them use this as their model for what the next pandemic will look like. It's because they know we're doing gain of function research. It's because they're doing it. They're making it more transmissible so that it can turn into a pandemic because then it can be airborne or droplets or whatever the hell you want to call it. And we're just sitting here like sitting ducks waiting for it to happen. So, yes, it's great that the US is pulling out of the pandemic treaty, but it doesn't change the fact that we are still funding the research that's allowing it to happen. And if the World Health Organization really cared, they would be begging for the Wuhan lab to shut down and they would be calling for an end of gain of function research. But they're not doing that. Why? Because if there's no pandemic, they don't get their power. They want to exert their power over the world. And it's like this is planned. It's a plandemic. They want this to happen so they can put forth everything that's in this treaty. One world order.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna like up the ante here on the conspiracy th side of things
It can get
because
worse. Don't
it,
tell me this.
it can get so much worse, okay? I'm gonna bring AI into the mix with all of this because we do talk about AI a lot, but not really in the context of creating bioweapons. And it is a legitimate thing that is happening as we speak, okay? There are advances being made in CRISPR technology and in AI bioengineering technology. And when you put these two things together, it's pretty scary. So we've mentioned CRISPR technology before, but if you don't know what it is, it's basically gene editing tools that allow scientists to cut, delete, or replace DNA and RNA sequences. And they can do this with like incredible precision. And the idea was actually inspired by natural immune systems in bacteria. And it has some great uses because it's currently being used in gene therapy and treatment to correct genetic mutations responsible for certain diseases. Like I think it's been very effective with sickle cell anemia. And there's currently trials underway for cancer and HIV treatment, along with neurological and mental health research related to issues like schizophrenia, depression, autism, and PTSD. It's also being used in agriculture because they're engineering drought-resistant crops and creating disease-resistant livestock. And that's like a whole other like rabbit hole we could go down that we're not going to go down today. But CRISPR technology has been like a game changer for revolutionizing medicine because it can be used to potentially eliminate certain diseases. But at the same time, it can be used to create synthetic viruses and enhance the infectivity of pathogens. So if it lands in the wrong hands or it's used maliciously or recklessly, it could very easily create the next pandemic because this technology is capable of creating highly infectious, lethal, and evasive viruses. And it can all be custom made. And there was a report published back in April of 2023 by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and it was the Annual Threat Assessment of U.S. Intelligence Committee. And that particular report highlighted genome editing and specifically CRISPR technology as being a potential weapon of mass destruction because of its broad accessibility, rapid advancement, and heightened risk of deliberate or accidental use. And the report basically indicated that this technology is more of a threat than nuclear weapons. So let's combine that with AI, okay? And how that plays into the whole bioengineering of viruses, because AI algorithms are already being used to predict protein structures, to model mutations of escaped viruses, to design synthetic genes and vaccine evasion profiles. And it's doing all of this at like an unprecedented speed because what used to take years of experiments in a lab can now be done in hours with AI. And for shits and giggles, let's throw AI robots into the mix, right? Because then you wouldn't even need human researchers or scientists in a lab to create a new pandemic because AI can do it all without an actual person having to step foot in the lab.
Okay. I was going to save this for another episode, but I just have to touch on it. And I promise I will do a deep dive. That's why I wanted to save it because I want to like really fully research it. But late last night, I was watching a biologist and she was talking about something I'd never heard of before, which is mirror bacteria.
I wait, I will get there at the end.
Oh, you're talking about it?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, I
Oh,
am.
oh,
Yes.
okay. It's wild.
That's like that's
Oh, so
the
that's the
tree.
rabbit hole you were telling me you were going
Yes.
down. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay. Because I can't like contain myself. I'm like, this is
Okay.
huge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, no, that's
Okay.
yeah. We're gonna get there. Okay. So like let's go back to the idea of the WHO Global Pandemic Treaty because all of this technology plays a part because these new changes to the treaty will essentially give the WHO primary access and basically oversight and control of these centralized databases that are going to contain not just your personal medical records and information, but scientific information about gene editing, pathogen sequences and samples, outbreak data, vaccine developments, like anything being done around the idea of viruses and pandemics. It's all going to be in this centralized database in the name of global biosafety. And so, even if they say it's not, it does give the WHO the power to control not only a global pandemic response, but also whatever narrative they choose to create, because they're basically going to be the gatekeepers of all of this information and how it will be shared globally. So, combine that with biosurveillance like AI and CRISPR technology, the WHO essentially will have the ability to define what they deem to be the scientific consensus. And if they want, they can suppress any dissenting research, any alternative medical viewpoints or theories, just like they did with COVID. Only this time, it will all be coordinated on a global scale because they will be in charge of the world. So let's say there is a synthetic or engineered pandemic, the WHO would have the ability to control the narrative. And that is just so fucking frightening to me. And another reason why I'm very grateful that the Trump administration chose our sovereignty as a nation over being part of this global fucking treaty.
Well, and this just like, it makes me sick thinking about this because, you're talking about this CRISPR technology and editing like genes and stuff like that, right? And it just makes me think like this mRNA technology that was in the COVID vaccines, has this already happened? Has our DNA and our genetics already been messed with? And like, because
I'm
that's what
sure
the
it has.
mRNA does. It's like the information in DNA, it can't be decoded directly onto proteins. It has to be copied into mRNA. And so what the hell did they do? Like, there could be things we don't even know are happening within us from this
Right. And
mRNA technology.
it's not just COVID that's using mRNA technology.
Hmm.
Like pretty much every vaccine that they're creating nowadays, they're using mRNA technology. That's another rabbit hole we need to go down. So let me just introduce something else here because I want to get your take on this. Have you heard of Bioradar?
No.
Okay, I hadn't either. Okay, I literally was going down this major rabbit hole yesterday. So, Bioradar is essentially like AI-powered biosurveillance systems that can be used to detect unknown pathogens and like genetic anomalies in wastewater. So, what it can do, like it can be used to scan public sewage or hospital samples, blood banks, animal vectors, anything, right? And it detects unknown pathogens or genetic anomalies in real time. And I came across this because I read an article in phys.org that was talking about a new study being led by UNLV, where they were using AI to scan wastewater to detect pathogens because they can be identified before clinical testing can identify them. And it doesn't even need to match an exact strain because what the AI does is it looks for patterns of weaponization or unnatural mutation rates. So scientists are saying this is great because this technology can be used to map, viruses that are emerging or how they mutate and how they're transmitted much faster with AI than with the existing wastewater surveillance methods that they've been using. And one of the study co-authors, Edwin O, he's a professor with the Nevada Institute of Personalized Medicine at UNLV, said, quote, imagine identifying the next outbreak even before the first patient enters a clinic. This research shows how we can make this possible. Through the use of AI, we can determine how a pathogen is evolving without even testing a single human being, end quote.
Okay, I wonder if this is where the conspiracy comes in. Have you heard the conspiracy about the street lights, like those blue? I don't know if
No.
you have them in where you're at, but they around COVID, they started replacing the street lights, and these lights are like blue or like a purplish color. And it's been in the news and stuff. And the news is like, oh, that just happens after a certain amount of time. It like the LED goes out or whatever. But it's like everywhere. You see these blue lights. And the conspiracy is that these blue lights can somehow tell if you've had the mRNA vaccine. It like scans you, which I was like, this is so freaking stupid. Like, who's believing this shit? Well, now I'm like, oh my God, bioradar? That's actually a thing? I mean, what the hell? This is a little
Mhm.
terrifying. And it makes me think too, last night when I was going down the rabbit hole of like the Apple Health app, there was this girl who's like she's I forget her name. She's really well known, some cybersecurity person. But she was like, do you ever think about the fact that like when you go to the hospital, if they're going to track your heart, they're going to do what is it called? The EKG. And if they're going to track
Yeah,
your brain, they
EKG.
put like all the things on your head, those little like sticker things. And then if they're going to track your blood or your heartbeat, they put the thing on your finger. And she's
Mhm.
like, is anyone else thinking about how does Apple get this information? You wear your watch, your Apple Watch, and it can track all of that. She's like, how do you think they're doing that? And like she went into this whole thing of kind of like what you're talking about here that people don't even think about it because you can't even fathom technology like that existing, but it does.
Okay. It does. Like, do you have a smart ring?
No, I'm afraid
Okay,
to get
I
any of
do.
it now. I don't even
Oh.
have an Apple Watch.
See, I don't have an Apple Watch anymore, but I do have a smart ring because I wanted to monitor my sleep because I sleep so shitty. And I was
Mhm.
trying to figure out like when am I waking up? What's going on? Well, I don't even have one of the super advanced ones. I just have the ring con. I had an Aura ring years ago and then I stopped wearing it and then I ended up getting this ring con. But it monitors my vitals all day. It will alert me when I'm getting into too high of a stress. It will tell me if I have done too much activity or if I'm not doing enough activity. It gives detailed accounts of my sleep, how many times I woke up, what time it all happened, what my heart rate was, what my CO2 is. I mean, it is super fucking detailed. And this shit is all being tracked in my phone. And where else? Where else is it going?
Right.
Who has the database?
What's in the terms of agreement that no one ever
Right.
reads when they like
Yeah, you
download a
just
new
sign your life
app?
away. Yeah.
And this is what pisses me off. If they have that technology, why are they still charging people thousands of dollars to go and do these sleep studies for like their
Mhm.
CPAP machine when you could just put a ring on and it can measure all that stuff for you? You know?
Yeah.
Like it's such a scam. But it's creepy because, you know, you listed all these things that would be great, like scanning public sewage and, you know, like how it could be used for good. And of course, that's what they market it as. But what I hear with my conspiracy brain is a biosurveillance system. Like, this is how the surveillance state begins. You know, they scare
Yep.
the hell out of everyone with a deadly pandemic, even worse than COVID-19, with a high fatality rate like Nipah. And then they offer us a solution. Just give up your freedom and privacy, and we will keep you safe. We'll scan you all day, every day. And here's the thing, like, it's already happening. And how do we know they're only scanning wastewater and blood banks? Like, how do we know they're not scanning us already? They probably
Right.
are, right? It's just, it's to me, it's like straight out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. I don't like any of it. I don't care what the benefit is. It's just, it's too much. There's too much control that they have over our lives. And it's freaking me out right now. Um,
I just gotta mention something because now you've got me on this thing where like I won't even use Siri because I don't like the idea that, my phone is listening and capable of doing all this shit. But I'm walking around with this smart ring on my finger that's like transmitting all my data to who knows where.
yeah. Yeah, it's really scary. Someone was talking about that the other day with the oh, I forget what it's called, but it's like a smart thing like the ring, but you put it around your head and it's supposed to track your brain waves and stuff. And it might have been this woman was saying like, yeah, they can hack that and they could literally like mess with your thoughts and feelings. I'm like, what
Yeah.
the hell? So creepy. So this led me to coming across this interesting article. The Guardian published it. I think it was a transcript from an interview that was done with Klaus Schwab's freaky little sidekick, Yuval Noah Harari, who, like, that
Mhm.
guy just totally creeps me out. So he's like, part of the World Economic Forum. And he says that, quote, free will isn't a scientific reality. It's a myth inherited from Christian theology. And I mean, he goes on at length about how we basically live in a fantasy where we really think that we have free will and we're in control. But then he starts explaining like how easy it is to manipulate our thoughts without us even knowing it. And he says, in order to survive in the 21st century, we need to leave behind this naive view that humans are free individuals and come to terms with what humans really are, which he calls hackable animals. We're just hackable animals, Tara. That's what Yuval says. So I'm going to quote him here. He says, quote, within a few years, biometric sensors could give hackers direct access to your inner world, and they could observe what's going on inside your heart. Not a metaphorical heart, beloved by liberal fantasies, but rather the muscular pump that regulates your blood pressure and much of your brain activity. The hackers could then correlate your heart rate with your credit card data and your blood pressure with your search history. What would the Inquisition and the KJB have done? KGB have done with biometric bracelets that constantly monitor your moods and affections. Stay tuned. So this sounds just like what you just talked about. But I mean, this was an article, I think this was from a few years ago, where he was
Stay
talking about
tuned.
this. Yes,
Stay
like,
tuned, like it's coming.
yeah, like he knows, like, hey, it's coming, and you idiots, like, think you're free. Well, like, they're controlling your thoughts. And that's really
Um,
what could, I mean, if what you're saying, if this already exists, yes, they probably can. They probably can control everything. We're like
yeah.
robots.
Yeah. And we're gonna deep dive into that next week. But now I want to bring up the mirror life,
Ooh,
okay?
yeah.
Because I saw this in another article like 2 days ago, and we've actually talked about mirror life on a previous episode very briefly. And if you guys don't know what it is, it's fucking Frankenstein science. It's basically shit that researchers have been playing around with, where they're able to create life from the opposite molecular building blocks of living things. So it's like mirror images in reverse. Because everything in our world, whether it's bacteria, humans, animals, plants, we're all made from something called chiral molecules that have handedness, like left or right hand. And nature only uses left-handed amino acids and right-handed sugars to build life. But scientists are flipping this, and they're creating new biology with right-handed amino acids and left-handed sugars. And they're creating entire cells that are like opposite mirror versions of the originals. And when I spoke about this on a previous episode, I remember talking about how it's crazy and dangerous because our immune systems and known antibiotics, like enzymes, can't recognize, nothing can attack these mirror versions of life because it doesn't exist. Because natural immune recognition depends on molecular handedness. And without predators or normal ecological checks in place, mirror organisms could quickly grow and dominate ecosystems, infecting plants, animals, humans, basically destroying all living things. And this shit is literally being created in labs right now as we speak. And if it escapes, it could spread uncontrollably, and there's nothing in the natural world that can stop it. So the reason this caught my attention again was because earlier this week, nearly 40 scientists, including two Nobel laureates, they published a nearly 300-page report in the journal Science talking about how dangerous this technology is, raising the alarm and calling for a global pause on mirror life research because it can lead to such catastrophic consequences. So I just want you to imagine if this technology is combined with AI and with CRISPR technology. So you have the mirror life that can create a potentially unstoppable pandemic. Then you have this push for AI lab automation and model-driven biology, which is already capable of streamlining the design of novel organisms, including mirror microbes. And from what I understand, the only saving grace with CRISPR technology right now is because current gene editing tools can't be used on mirror life because they're designed to work with normal RNA and DNA. But who's to say that scientists won't create a mirror version of CRISPR technology and use synthetic mirror enzymes? And Stephanie, what would be the best way to do this? To use fucking AI to create it because AI is already smarter than we are.
Yeah.
So when you think of all these things in context together, this is like beyond a horror show.
No, and it pisses me off because you have the top scientists in the world, award-winning scientists that are calling for this to stop, and they're still doing it. You have the top computer scientists in the world calling for AI to, like, let's pause it, and they're still doing it. It's like, what the hell is going on here? You know, I mean, it's
Yeah.
terrifying. They're not slowing down at all. And the girl that was doing the video that I saw on this, she was saying with AI, they think it'll be about 10 years and they'll be able to have this. But the way that AI is growing, it could be even less than that. It could be here
Yeah.
already. We don't know.
Yeah. We don't even understand AI. We don't understand the speed at which AI is growing. Like, and they're all actively working on this stuff. And you could sit there and say you're working on it independently in separate environments, but not really. And let's just say you have the AI with the mind of its own, the independent thinking AI that is being used in a lab with creating this technology that decides it wants to go rogue and do something with the bacteria and viruses. Like, it sounds like a movie, but no, I don't think so.
No. Okay, so that's the other thing. I heard an interview with that Yuval guy from the World Economic Forum where he was talking about AI and he was saying people think that AI is controlled by humans. Like we train it, so we have control. He said, well, then it wouldn't be AI. That would just be an advanced computer system. He said, when we're talking about AI, we mean technology that takes on a mind of its own and can do things without a human being like teaching it and everything else. So I mean, people that think like, oh, it's just a computer program, we can shut it off. It's no, this is like its
Yeah.
own independent, free will, thinking thing, and it's advancing faster than we can fathom.
Yeah.
So it's scary. And mirror neuron or mirror bacteria, I mean, you wouldn't even know. Like that's the thing. It's like it's a Trojan horse. Your immune system's never going to see it coming. It's not going to recognize it.
Right. And like, and I'm sure they're trying to come up with, mirror vaccines now to deal with this. It's just so crazy to me. Like you are fucking with nature to the point where you are creating something that is the opposite design of actual life.
Yeah, we need to stop playing God
Yeah.
and just like leave it alone. Just like we shouldn't be going into caves searching for new viruses. It's just not a good idea. And then we shouldn't mutate those and make them more transmissible. Why are we
I
doing
didn't
this?
know I didn't know they were literally going into caves and getting bats. That's
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they absolutely are. It's wild. Wild.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's terrifying. Kind of scared now, but that'll, at least we're not in the pandemic treaty. That's one good sign, but I mean
Yeah.
there's not a lot of hope right now. You just deflated like any hope that I had. All right. Well, everyone, try to enjoy the rest of your week and we'll see you back here on Friday. Thanks for tuning in.